one Mississippi, two Mississippi,
Oh,
three Mississippi.
I can't even Mississippi today. I'm so sick. I'm playing.
Well, we got to get you drinking
hurt
some
today.
Asparagus juice or carrot juice.
Sometimes you have to play hurt, though. That's what we do around here.
It's what you do as a parent, for damn sure. A lot.
You just jam a bunch of Dayquil in your face, and then you're like, fine, and then you collapse later.
Take care of your troops first. That's exactly right. As Dave Tompkins always says, he learned at West Point, leaders eat last. But got a great show in store for you today with the best executive producer on the planet, Brenden Martin, down in Ocala, Florida.
Ever, and Rob Browne.
Yeah, we always
love this morning.
We just keep working at it, man. We've got Chris Lee, Southeastern 14, going to jump on in just a minute. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider in Tuscaloosa, checking in from Alabama. They're in the Sweet 16. And late in the show, we'll have Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, all with us. So look, smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on your Android or iPhone. Tell your friends, your families, neighbors, everybody. And you can sync this show while you're driving your truck or your car or your 18-wheeler across the country, which, by the way, 18-wheeler truck drivers keep the economy going. Back during the lockdowns and the pandemic, I'll never forget all those 18-wheelers on the lawn of the White House. More power to them. They're some of your most loyal listeners and viewers you will have anywhere. But Brenden, we'll be right back. Everybody get pen and paper handy. We're going to make your day start off great because today is a great day to be an American.
Unless you're,
unless you're sick.
Even sick.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, look, going to be a great day today. And when you're out running around, running your errands, whatever like that, you're in the Memphis, look for Clay's Smoked Tuna. Brenden, it's one of my favorite places to go. They've got smoked tuna, smoked buffalo chicken dip, smoked chicken salad, smoked salmon. If it can be smoked, Clay's Smoked Tuna in Memphis. A lot of times you can catch them at Campbell Clinic. They're out there, but great food. He's a member, one of our supporters of the show. Love this stuff. Brenden, I don't know. I'd be drinking a ton of water and orange juice. And this show, we're going to try to make you feel better. Had fun on the Buddy Martin show with your dad last night. Great conversation with Franz Beard, Shane Matthews. I think we talked a lot about the Sweet 16 and Shoney, and I know Chris Lee is going to be with us in just a minute, but Shoney, Rob Anderson, one of our loyal viewers down in Valdosta, sent me an interesting text, Brenden. 8 of the Sweet 16 teams are 1 or 2 seeds. Now, we do know there's only one double-digit seed in the Sweet 16, and I would play, do you know who it is, Brenden? But I know your head feels like a log jam. But there's only one double-digit seed team in this tournament. And I know Chris Lee of the Southeastern 14 up in the mid-state in Nashville with a soon-to-be expanded studio to reflect our new brothers, Oklahoma and Texas, as they come on board. Nah, go State. He knows it's North Carolina State is the only double seed in this tournament.
They do this, the hook 'em horn.
Yeah. Chris, how are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen.
Hope you're doing well.
It's been a week.
Yeah, it has. What? Are you sore? Little curvature of the spine from watching so much basketball? Since my wife, honestly, Mildred or Audrey asked me last week. She goes, "Is it over?" I said, "It's just starting." She goes, "Oh God, this is a great time of year." What are your thoughts so far?
Well, I mean, I think almost a bigger part of my week has been following coaching searches. But I mean, Here's what's interesting. Run down Ken Palm, his top 16, and compare it to what's left in the tournament, and it's amazing.
How
Well,
how comparable is his or his teams compared to who's actually in there?
Let me pull it up just to have it for certain, but there was a graphic. Okay, here's what you've got. Of the top 14, 13 are available, and I bet you can guess. Of the top 14 teams in Ken Palm, 13 are still playing in the NCAA tournament, and I bet you can guess the one that is not.
NC State.
No, Auburn.
Oh well, yeah. I try not to talk. I try not to talk about that. That one was
13. Go ahead.
No. I'm just saying that one. You know what? Give credit to Yale. Auburn had. You can whine about officiating. You can whine about having to go across the country. That's on you. Just what? The fans can say it all day long, but I don't like it when coaches get upset with that because the players feed off of that. Man up, it sucked. We know it was. It was a huge, sandwich, and we all had to take a bite. But Alabama went out there. They're in the Sweet 16. Samford was, let's face it, they were robbed by a narrative call. That was, we have to keep Kansas out there. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to hear you. We got you on here because you are smart, you're great, and you have an awesome show.
Well, look, to the Auburn part, don't throw a forearm early in the game. I get all that stuff, but you don't do that, and this isn't a conversation. Number two, the teams that aren't left, Baylor 13, which got beat by a Clemson team, which I thought was maybe a matchup issue for some teams.
Yeah.
At least I thought it in the first round it was. Michigan State is 16. Well, Michigan State got beat by North Carolina, which is number 9. So that's one of those that it falls apart in the top 16 because two of them played each other and one of them had to lose. You go down, the other teams left, San Diego State is 17. They're still left. Clemson is 23, and then NC State all the way down at 53, way down the list behind these other teams. But so far in the tournament, you have upsets in the first round, and you always have that, but it is the better teams that are prevailing. I didn't know to necessarily expect that because we've talked about parity and all kinds of things. I thought this might be a year you saw some really crazy stuff, multiple double-digit seeds in the round of 16 or something like that. But here we are. It's not that, and the one that's here is a power conference team that probably underachieved in the regular season.
Yeah. Tom Izzo's teams are always ready to play. But they hadn't won national championship since 2000, but they've been to 7 Final Four since then. They're going to be ready to play. But what I think we're seeing from SEC teams is we have great athletes, great basketball players, not necessarily the best basketball IQs in terms of like those kids at UConn, Villanova historically. And we're all caught up in athleticism. And also, we forget about team play. John Calipari finally admitted it, what we've been saying. You're playing against a bunch of guys that have been together in the tournament for 4 or 5 years. So the difference, age 23, 24 versus 18 and 19-year-olds. He did have some veteran players this year, but they sink everything they've got into getting the one-and-done guys. And that model, he admitted, is broken. It's not like John Calipari can't coach. The guy can flat out coach, but he's either going to change his model or Kentucky's going to come up with 35 or 50 million. What is the buyout?
33 is what I've been told.
Okay. All right. That's a lot of money to pay a coach.
And I don't think he's getting fired.
I don't think he is either. If they were going to do it, who would they go after?
Well, that's part of the problem. You're paying, as much as John Calipari is underachieved, it's not like they're out there going 9-23. They were still a 3 seed in this tournament.
Yeah.
They're still winning a lot more than they lose. Do they disappoint at the wrong time? Yes. Is it probably a little tougher for his model to work in this time? Yeah. When you're playing 24-year-olds, it probably is. So Some of it's circumstantial. I'm sure a lot of it's on him. But look, at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know who. Let's say, like, who could you get to justify paying John Calipari to go away? Let's look at the best coaches in college. I'm just going to do this thought exercise, and I haven't even done it.
Yeah.
Let's run down the top few teams in KenPom. Connecticut, number 1. I don't think Dan Hurley's going anywhere. Houston, number 2. I mean, maybe you could get Kelvin Sampson to take Kentucky. I have no information there, but let's just try that on, okay? I don't know what kind of check you have to write him, number 1. And number 2, you got to pay Calipari a buyout of, $33 million. Purdue's number 3 in KenPom. That's a coach who's come under fire for not being able to win in the tournament. You're going to pay $33 million to go get that. I mean, and Matt Painter, I think, has got some deep roots at Purdue. Auburn's number 4. Maybe Bruce Pearl. You can go down the list and you kind of can see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
It's either guys that probably going to leave. So, like, if it's not a guy in college, I guess if you could get a Brad Stevens or a Billy Donovan, then sure. But what do you got to pay those guys in addition to a buyout? Your marginal improvement of getting the next guy for most guys is slim to none and maybe negative. And then you're paying a premium for a guy not to coach on top of that. So the math of it at some point is hard to make work.
Well, look at Auburn in football. Got rid of Gus Malzahn, and he frustrated me as much as anybody. And a guy that never had a losing season in 8 years, and now you're 3 straight losing seasons. That hadn't happened since 1948, 49, and 50. Brian Harsin, Alan Green did that as a grudge, to the Auburn boosters who tried to put in Kevin Steele. I know that story. I ain't dumb. That's why Alan Green's an associate AD at Ole Miss, and if he pops his head up to be an AD anywhere, that's going to be brought up. You're right. You got to be careful with it. I want to give credit. I don't know if it was you, but one of our guests last week on the show pointed this out, and you're exactly right. Were you a trial lawyer before you started Southeastern 14?
No.
You're very good with presenting facts. So I'm going to throw something that one of our guests pointed out.
Were you the Lincoln lawyer at one point?
Lincoln lawyer.
Yes. Hey, that would have made me a lot more money than this. But anyway, I did not.
Yeah, I feel like Chris Lee's Batman.
He is. Listen, let me. This is interesting. Since 1998, that's when my middle son Wilson was born. UConn has won 5 national championships, and that's 2 more than North Carolina, 2 more than Duke, and 3 more than Kansas, and 4 more than Kentucky. UConn is the king of college basketball, and they're very likely. I'll bet you right now, Chris, next time you and I meet, and I will buy you a steamer pack of crystals, with or without cheese. That's 24 grenades with shrapnel. That UConn wins it all. Danny Hurley, you watch coaches like him, they're fun to watch. But you throw in, and then this is something Kevin Skarbinski was on the show on our Monday basketball roundtable. He said John Calipari's first 6 years at Kentucky went to 5 NCAA tournaments and 1 NIT. In that period, they were 22-4 in the NCAA tournament at Kentucky. They went to 4 Final Fours. They won a national championship. Now that 38-0 team, which tied the mark of the 1976 Indiana team that Alabama almost beat, that won the national championship. Okay, 22-4 in their first 5 NCAA appearances. Since then, we got the year of the China virus when there was no basketball tournament. That was a horrible year. It was tough. Okay. Since then, there's 7 NCAA tournament appearances, but that's included in there because that wasn't 7 years ago. But in their last 7 NCAA tournament appearances, Kentucky is 10-7. And you're exactly right. That's why you would be a great controller at a university. Why are you going to pay $33 million to have a guy sit in timeout with a dunce cap on and not coach? And who are you going to get that's that much better? If John Calipari decides, I'm changing my model, you better watch out. Because I watched him at Memphis. The guy can flat out coach. He did it at UMass. He didn't get a lobotomy, did he?
No, a lot to unpack there. First, let's go back to Connecticut. No, it's all good because there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Connecticut has not only won 5 national titles in that span, they've done it with 3 different coaches. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think they're going to win it this year. You've heard me say this ad nauseum. I think parity is a much bigger factor in everything right now. College baseball, college basketball. We talked about it all year in college football. I don't know how much of that is what's happened to John Calipari. I don't know how much of it is a inability to adapt, but I think it is something. I mean, there was a time where I'm not going to say he was the Nick Saban of college basketball, but it felt like some years it was close when they were running teams out there with Anthony Davis and 38-0 and all those teams that he had. It kind of felt like they were in that same stratosphere.
Yeah.
You saw one coach that saw it start to drop off a little bit and just said, "Hey, I'm done." You've seen another coach that has kind of hung on, and it seems to be slipping a little bit more. Now, maybe it's not. These things can change quickly. Sometimes you see coaches. Bill Belichick, for example. There was a period of time where the Patriots went from dominant to going, 9-10 years without winning the Super Bowl. And then they strung together a few more just like that. And so maybe that's in the cards. I don't know. But it's interesting.
Well, last night I was on the Buddy Martin show, and Franz Beard was on. And they Franz brought up and chronicled Billy Donovan's career at Kentucky, at Florida. And there was early success. Yeah. And then they went after they, years without really a whole lot happening. It was time to move on. Let's get rid of him. Remember the late 60s when they changed the substitution rules in football. Coach Bryant, the game has passed him by. The old gray bear ain't what he used to be. And then Darrell Royal and Emery Ballard and him got together, probably a few cocktails involved, a few Chesterfields, put in the wishbone in the spring of 71. You can change. And the great coaches, if Coach Bryant were alive today, he'd have dominated college football like he did in his heyday. The great ones adapt. But I'm going to tell you, Chris, you're right. I don't think if Kentucky fires John Calipari, you think Jay Wright's going to – Jay Wright,
no,
he ain't coming out of retirement. I love that guy. But you do remember the article 7 years ago. Said, why did Villanova go and win a couple of national titles? He said, when we first got here, in the first 3 years, we recruited 5 five-star players. And we were about 500. We weren't recruiting to the culture of a hard, rigorous academic standard, private Catholic university, Villanova, in the middle of Philadelphia. And I've been to Philadelphia. I'm sure both of y'all have too. There are like 52 colleges and universities in Philadelphia. Academics are the deal. They started recruiting to their culture at Villanova. But it's just to me, it's so cool. And you think Ariana, the women's basketball coach with 11 national titles, and Dan Hurley don't ever get together and talk strategy. I think UConn is the premier culture right now in all college of any sport. You pick it, it's UConn.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to throw men and women's in there together, I think that's kind of hard to argue. They have, and being able to throw a rock and find talent in that area of the country certainly helps. And we're in a place where everything is football dominated, and travel baseball's a big thing. They're up there where it's cold, and what you do when you want to exercise, you go indoors and you play basketball. That probably doesn't hurt either.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, why are the best bowlers from Wisconsin and Michigan and Illinois? It's cold. You're inside. You eat a lot of brats and sausages and cheese and beer. But you know what? That's where the great bowlers come from. They don't come from the Everglades. All right, Chris, now looking at the Sweet 16, and I like this question. Ask Chris what poor soul is taking the Vandy men's basketball job. They announced it, I think, yesterday. And I want to see Vanderbilt win because I told you a lot of my family members have graduated from Vanderbilt. And I live in Memphis, and I've always taken a lot of pride in that because academically it was always like, wow, you made it through Vanderbilt. Do they still care about winning? You know that program better than anybody, but more important than anything else, you're not afraid to tell the truth and tell people what you think is going on and being honest. I love it.
Well, it feels like it's been playtime for 4 or 5 years in the athletic department, and it feels like it hit a breaking point with Jerry Stackhouse. They paid him somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million to go away, which is not a Vanderbilt thing to typically do. That's number one. I think number two, I think all the mistakes had sort of frustrated people. You see the changing conference landscapes, all the things out there, NIL. And they said, hey, wait a minute, we better get serious and we can't screw something up. As critical as I've been about Vanderbilt, I was worried, and you do not know how it's going to play out till it plays out. And I wondered, are they going to go back and do the same kinds of searches they've done with awful processes, or are they going to take this seriously and do things like other Power 5 schools did? And I didn't know. But now that they are on the other side of the process and some stuff has started to leak out about how they did it, I think they actually stepped up and acted like a Power 5 athletic department for the first time in a long time. I don't think they got their first choice, but I think they were. No, look, there's some of this that's luck, okay? They're in one of the two conferences that actually matters. And they've also got, billionaires as boosters who cares. So you've got people that can write checks to make mistakes go away and things like that. So I think they were in a good position, and they said, hey, we're going to conduct a legitimate search. We're going to cast a good net. We're going to talk to a lot of coaches. We're going to build a profile. And I think my guess is Mark Byington was their fourth choice, but I'd said all along, hey, there's a really good pool of candidates out there right now. You might be able to really goof it up with a half dozen candidates, but still do okay because the pool is good enough. I don't know that Mark Byington would have been my first choice, but I look at it like you look at coaches sometimes as commodities, and there might be a bunch of them that can work. And your job, I think, is to identify the pool of people that might work, make your case. And I think Mark Byington, the more I learn and the more I talk to people in the industry, is a really good basketball coach.
Yeah.
I think he's going to bring the stuff they've lacked with work ethic, with being able to identify the right people. He knows how to recruit the South, which is where they're going to get a lot of their players. I don't think it was a splashy hire, but the more I learn about him, I think it was a good hire. And I think for the first time in a long time, they really got it right in how they approached the situation, because they had multiple guys that I think underneath him. And I think if he turned him down, they could have had Chris Mack. Now, look, Chris Mack comes with baggage. We could talk about that. Might have been a disaster, might have worked. I don't know what the answer is. I think Bucky McMillan would have been available to them. So they were able to identify several good coaches. I think that they were really close to getting Dusty May. They were really, really close. And for what I understand, he would have picked Vanderbilt over Louisville just because some things about the situation that he liked. Again, that just backs up the fact that I think they ran a good process, and I think they found a guy. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I can make you a case that it will.
Yeah. You talk a lot about the culture at Vanderbilt and the way they look at the athletic department. If you had an AD and an administration at Vanderbilt like you do at Alabama or LSU or Georgia or Florida or Auburn, God only knows how good they could be, because who wouldn't want to live up there? I sell a lot of bonds. Williamson County per capita, highest income county in the state of Tennessee, earning-wise. It's a great place to be. And they don't want to be the next Atlanta, they don't want to have 40 ginormous exits. It's an awesome place to have tournaments and media days. All right, couple of more questions before you go. Chris Lee is with us, Southeastern 14. He does stuff every day. Catch him on YouTube. Has great panels, discussions. They really, really cover deep topics on the Southeastern Conference and college sports. Of the teams that are still available, again, and you just made a good point. What coaches? Who wants to go somewhere? If a Dusty May, I'd rather go to Vanderbilt over Louisville if he had the opportunity. Of the teams that are left, how do you think this thing next week when we talk on Tuesday? Who do you think the 4 final teams will be?
My pre-tournament bracket Final Four was Connecticut, Arizona, Duke, and Purdue. I'm sorry, no, Creighton. I'm going to stick with that, but the one I worry about, Houston has shown up and played pretty well. I was worried about the injuries. They survived a tough matchup with Texas A&M. I thought A&M was in a spot where it could upset them based on the way that game had gone down earlier. Yeah. Houston survived some foul trouble and stuff like that and advanced. So that's my wild card. Tennessee was able to get 2 games through the tournament without shooting at all and still win. So I think that's one to watch a little bit. I think Creighton's a tough matchup, but I'll stick with what I went with pre-tournament.
All right, Dalton Connect. The strategy seems pretty obvious what everybody's trying to do, trying to take him out of the game. We talked about it a lot during the season. I go back to that loss to South Carolina, 63-59 at Thompson Bowling Arena. He had like 38 points. The rest of his teammates had 27 or some low number. They seem to be getting around that. Their big guy, Adu, he's not the most coordinated guy underneath, but what does Tennessee need to do? They don't have to have Dalton Connect score 25 or 30 points to win. That's a good sign. So I'm looking for him it's like a stock on a 200-day moving average. I'm looking for his breakout game to come this week. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, they're going to need it because Creighton as a team shoots the 3 better than Tennessee does. Tennessee has, you look back in earlier in the year, some of the games Tennessee lost, and I'm gonna pull this up to make sure I get it right. But one of them was Purdue, best player in the country, best big in the country for sure. One of them was Kansas, Hunter Dickinson, and then North Carolina. That was on the road, but Mississippi State's a team that can kind of get physical with you. I don't know if Creighton's that kind of team, but Kentucky beat them once. Team with length inside. I worry for Tennessee that if it becomes a shooting contest, Creighton's just got more guys that could do it. No, by the way, it's got a big inside and Ryan Kalkbrenner who's really good. And that is where I had Tennessee going out before the tournament at that point to that team for those reasons.
Zach Edey, the abominable snowman, the Bumble, that guy, he's pretty darn athletic. He's been there a long time. Purdue, golly, they get a lot of criticism, but they're good. And Painter's got them there every year. The one thing about NC State, I like that big guy Burns. He reminds me of Jordan Davis a couple of years ago at Georgia, the big defensive lineman, 6'7", 300 and whatever you want to say it is. But he came out of Charlotte as a 2-star recruit, was a big-time basketball player. Did you remember seeing Burns on your radar coming out of high school? Because he's just become one of my favorite players in this whole tournament. I really I love his energy, and he quiet. He's a taller version of Charles Barkley.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I paid a lot of attention to him coming out of high school. No, look, he went to Tennessee first. Had his path blocked. It just wasn't going to work for him with the other guys they had. I mean, you look at him and can find all the reasons that it might not work because you don't see a lot of guys like that in college basketball. I'm sorry, he started at Winthrop, not Tennessee. I knew it was somewhere east of here, but look, I mean, I'm trying to think of comps. Glenn Davis, maybe something like that. They're different.
There you
guys.
go.
They're bigger. They're kind of light on their feet.
Yeah.
Look, it's unusual, but it works for him.
Yeah, it does. All right, ACC's got 4 teams in the Sweet 16. what is it? It's a cultural thing, basketball in the ACC, isn't it? I mean, the way they play it, Greensboro's a magical place. I'm looking forward to the SEC getting to that point. I just think we aren't there yet, but 6 out of 8 teams already out. But pound for pound, I got to say this. Buzz Williams, best dressed and best coach in the SEC. If he had more talent, he gets everything. Those guys love him, and they love playing for each other. They're fun to watch.
But by the way, quick correction. I thought my memories. DJ Burns did play it. Was at Tennessee first. He just didn't play his first year. So he was on the roster, but he redshirted.
Gotcha.
Back to your question. Look, the SEC had some tough matchups. I saw this when it came out. I didn't see Yale as a team that I thought would knock off Tennessee, but Auburn, but they were a good team. And there was potential there. I thought I wasn't crazy about Alabama's matchup, but they got through. The Oakland matchup with Kentucky, I talked to a coach at another school, and he said, watch out for that one. I think they got a chance to give them trouble with style of play that happened. The 6 of 8 gone narrative is going to be strong. A lot of people are going to like to celebrate that. I thought Florida got a tough matchup with Colorado. Colorado's not very deep, but man, they got 3 guys who were just studs, and they were guys that were durable and carried them. A lot's been made of the SEC losing teams, but I think some of it is just your draw. And there were some teams that didn't get great draws in this for the style they play.
Yeah, and the officiating, we all know this. It's not something we just learned. It's so different. You get used to what the league that you play in allows. When you get to the tournament, and Bruce Pearl said before the game, he goes, we beat Yale. We're bigger, we're deeper, probably 8 or 9 out of 10 times. But all it takes is one game when you're not all there. But again, Chad Baker-Mazara, he's going to probably come back for Auburn next year. Self-control. Just, you got to, I know that it's frustrating, but how many times have we all had opportunities to do something like that? You just got to, like the gospel says, peace I'll leave you. We've all been in that situation. It's tough, but dadgummit, it's a different game, but you got to give credit to Yale.
Yeah.
I think those guys out there pretty smart, and they slow it down. The longer you let an underdog hang around, you know what happens when you feed a stray dog. They just feel comfortable. The longer that game went on, I was like, you're up by 10 and then it's tied. You're up by 9, it's tied. That's the NCAA tournament, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, there were 2 teams in this league that I didn't think played with a lot of discipline this year. One was Alabama, one was Auburn. And I even kind of referred to it when we were doing the preview, or maybe it was a live stream we did. You saw kids on both those teams play without discipline at times and throw elbows and forearms and pick up flagrant fouls. And you do that at the wrong time when the right official is watching you, and you can really pay the price. I know Bruce Pearl is kind of a, how do I say this? I'll let my guys play. We're going to play
laissez-faire
hard.
Coach.
Well, that's not fair. We're going to play hard and we're going to play with an edge, and that is kind of what makes them go.
Yeah.
But there's a line that you can cross that can end up hurting you. And I think we saw that with Auburn in that ejection in that game. And that was a little bit of a concern coming in. And I think Alabama is one to watch. So Alabama played that way a little bit this year too.
Yeah.
And you can't afford to do something like that against the North Carolina, because your margin for error is not going to be as great as it was in your first 2 games if you're Nate Oates in Alabama.
Armando Bacot is one of 2 players to average 15 or more rebounds in his career in the NCAA tournament in every game. You know who the other one is?
Zach Edey?
Artis Gilmore.
Oh,
that's how long it's been.
Oh, you mean historically.
All time. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, gosh.
I should have qualified that. But anyway, listen, Chris. And Bruce Pearl, there's 2 narratives among Auburn fans. We got to get past, look where we were, look where the program is now, to the point of, okay, Your last time to be really relevant was 5 years ago in the Final Four. I look at it like after listening to Franz Beard chronicle Billy Donovan's career, success, and then wandering in the wilderness, and then after they won the national championship back-to-back, I think they went to 3 or 4 straight Final Fours after that. But over a 19, 20-year career, it's sort of like Tom Izzo. You can say what you want, hadn't won a national title since 2000. Who wants to play them in March? You're going to have a lot of anxiety and heartburn and indigestion. To me, it's about building a culture and having a coach. And you learn. Hey, Chad Baker Mazara, where would Auburn have been without him throughout the season? Just little things like that. But I tell you, the coaching quality in the league is awesome. What are y'all talking about on your show today? And I know you got to get going, but I watch your show a lot. I like the panels that you have. I like your discussions. And more than anything, we appreciate you taking time to share with our viewers as we're building this show up, SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU, and honored to have you.
Well, to your point, back to Florida and Billy Donovan, I remember, 18 years ago, whatever it was, they went through that run where they had Roberson and Walsh and all those guys. It seemed like they stayed there a while, and they never really got it done.
Yeah.
And then all those guys are out the next year, and it's a roster of who are these guys?
Yeah.
Well, they end up being Joakim Noah and and Al Horford and Lee Humphrey and all the guys that we didn't know at the time, but became household names.
Yes.
And just when you thought that like he has missed his window of opportunity, that they not roll the dice is not fair, but they come out with a whole new set of players that nobody knows about. And he goes back to back. So that number one. Number two, I'm going to spend my morning trying to get caught up on SEC baseball. I kept a little bit of an eye on it this weekend.
Yeah.
But you can only do so much at once. So we'll probably have some power rankings out today.
Good luck.
And yeah, exactly.
I tried that 2 days ago. I didn't.
Oh, it's a nightmare right now.
It's too much information.
Yeah, nightmare's not the word.
I need the Elon Musk, add a chip to my brain. I think would be much more helpful to process.
It's like studying for 3 finals on the same day.
Anyway, we'll do some predictions with the 2 SEC games coming up and whatever else hits the fan today.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, tell them how they can follow you, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, at Chris Lee 70 on Twitter. I'm not a prolific tweeter, but I do it when it strikes me. Southeastern 14 on YouTube, and our Vanderbilt stuff is at vandysports.com.
All right. Hey, thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, guys. Happy Easter.
Same here. Happy Easter to you as well. Man, another one that's happy to have on here, Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. Folks, it's only $48 a year. You follow Alabama. They have these great forums on there throughout the year. You never have to wander through the wilderness lost because it's not college football season, which it always is. But you got to break it down. Preseason, competitive season, postseason, and off season. But you're never going to be off if you subscribe to Tighter Insider, and also watch a great show Tuesday nights, 6:30 p.m. It's on YouTube Live. Tighter Insider TV, Rodney Orr and Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa. He's also a hell of an author with a great book, Bigger Than Bama. Here's the QR code up on the screen right now. And get out, folks. This is the May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport, Tighter Insider Report. Rodney, good morning. Happy Easter to you. It's the Holy Week, holiest week of the year. And someone had told me the other day that Good Friday wasn't a holiday anymore. I said, you are out of your mind. I ain't working. But it is Holy Week. Glad to have you on here. Little spring practice, as Joe Dean would often say, a little string music from downtown Lexington, KY. Staffarino, Rodney Orr. Rodney, don't you miss Joe Dean?
Well, Rob, I tell you, man. Yeah, I do. I remember those days. But you do a great imitation, I must admit.
I love that guy. He was a Converse shoe salesman. Remember that?
I didn't remember that. I didn't remember that part of it. But
it's only Idiot Savant Tuesday. I'm sorry. I'm the only one that remembers stupid stuff like that. But what's going on down there in Tuscaloosa County?
Well, we got some rain right now.
Well,
We
that's
got a
not
lot of
going to
rain.
affect. Yeah, well, that's not going to affect spring practice though, because they've got a beautiful indoor facility. But Kalen DeBoer in his first spring, right now, he's holding this thing together and got a quarterback battle. You're the only one that seems to think, and you were right last year. This thing is still a competition, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think it's always a competition. Again, I don't really know to what extent it's a competition yet. They haven't had their first scrimmage, which is Thursday. We'll see how Jalen Milroe continues to progress in this new offense. Everything I've heard has been exceptional. That he's had a great spring. He's worked extremely hard. He's doing all the right things. He's making all the throws, and it seems like he's making the adjustments. He's catching on really quickly. Of course, there's some competition, as you mentioned. I mean, Ty Simpson's a tremendously talented player himself, and then Dylan Lonergan, Austin Mack. So they've got a great quarterback room. But right now, I think Jalen Milroe's so far so good for him. I mean, he's done a really fantastic job.
The offensive line, let's talk about, end to end and the tight end position, how they're shaping up with all this.
The tight end position?
Yeah, well, just offensive line.
Offensive line, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, I think since the last time we spoke, Rob, when did we speak? Last Tuesday.
Yeah.
So last Tuesday, we spoke last Tuesday morning. So at 1:34, I marked it, 1:34 on Tuesday afternoon, I'm getting ready to walk out of the gym, and I've got a text message that says, I've got big news. Well, before I could call the guy, he calls me, and he said, hey, FYI, Caden Proctor's coming back. And I'm like, what? Yeah, that is big news. But yeah, so that was, he's not back yet. Officially, but he's going to be here. So that's certainly something. When you talk about the offensive line now, you've got your starting left tackle that's returned from Iowa, who had transferred shortly after Saban left. But so that's big news. You've got Elijah Pritchett at left tackle, who's doing a really good job, I think, this spring. He's a guy that even if he doesn't start at left tackle, I think he could compete at right tackle, because that's still a spot that's going to be open. I think Wilkin Formby's doing a fantastic job. Miles McVay's doing a fantastic job over there at right tackle in terms of, catching on, making progress every day. They've got a lot of candidates at that right tackle spot. I think, you look on the interior of the offensive line, that may be the strength of the offense right now. So you've got,
go ahead.
You've got Parker Brailsford back. I say back. He was an all Pac-12 center last year as a redshirt freshman at Washington. James Brockermeyer is also doing a fantastic job at center right now. You got Jaden Roberts back, who was just a beast last year at right guard when he finally got inserted in the lineup. And then left guard, of course, is Tyler Booker, who some people have as an All-American candidate. So they're really strong on the interior. Again, I think the offensive line has a chance to be really, really good.
Last year, you pointed to this during the season when Jaden Roberts, the big guy, 8'3", 475 out of Houston, a big one. When he was inserted into the line, everything began to click. Also got to say, and I don't know if this has happened yet or not, Wilkin Formby from Northridge High School played with John May. Watched him play some high school games with Waller and Susan of the May Veterinary Clinic out there at there was a game I went to at Paul W. Bryant High School out in Cottondale. Wilkin Formby, what an NIL deal, Taco Casa. His relation. His grandfather was a punter for Alabama.
He was.
Hey, Rodney, I watched this kid play, and there was, he's 6'8". Yep. And he's freakishly athletic. And, sometimes a kid that's from right there in Tuscaloosa might be overlooked because, sure, he's going to go to Alabama. But he did look around at other schools, but that's where his heart is. And Waller, I know, and Susan and Guy, and a bunch of them are listening right now, are watching. Everybody's following Wilkin Formby. So you're thinking he has a chance to play a lot this year? That's a great story, because from every account I have been relayed to me, he's just a first-class kid with a ton of athletic ability and really smart.
Yeah, he's all those things. I think he's a leader in already. He's a guy that I think in that freshman class, I think a lot of those guys look up to Wilkin because, I mean, again, he's got a great work ethic. He works really hard. He wants to be good. He's wanted to be good for a long time. I mean, this started, well before he got to Alabama. So yeah, he's got all the tools. Again, I think sometimes, Rob, the key is patience.
Yes.
When you're at Alabama or you're at a program where they've got a lot of talent, a lot of other guys, very similar to you. I mean, sometimes it just comes down to the little things, and you got to be patient, wait for your opportunity. And I think Jaden Roberts, for example, is a guy that last year. Think about it now. We really like Jaden Roberts. When I talked to his high school offensive line coach there at Galena Park, North Shore in the Houston area about him, he said, let me tell you, he was committed to Auburn originally.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And his high school coach told me, he said, look, man, the guy is a very, very gifted player. I watched him. I thought, man, he's massive. But with that said, I mean, last year he was a third string guy. I mean, he was running third string. You had Darian Dalcourt, if you remember, started off the season at right guard, and then he was T.J. Ferguson was another player, young player, really talented, transferred down to Florida State, but he was a guy that could have been a contributor, a real strong contributor at center or guard eventually. Well, he gets a little nicked up, so they go into the Texas A&M game, and they put Jaden Roberts in at right guard to start the game. I mean, it was a shocking move, actually, because no one was really aware that was going to happen. And then he starts that game, and he has a dominant game, and you're like, wow, where's this guy been? So, again, I go back to what I'm saying about Wilkin Formby and some of the other young offensive linemen. It's a matter of patience. Just be patient, wait for your opportunity, and focus on the things that you can control. And I think that's one thing that, Wilkin's really working hard at.
Well, and you think about big guys, like Wilkin Formby, 6'8", and I was fishing last summer with Wesley Britt up on the Spring River. He's 6'8", probably 350 now. He looks like a Wesley. He looked like he weigh about 230. I mean, but he's a freak athlete, and he was committed to Auburn for a long time out of Coleman and ended up at Alabama. Don't let guys get away that are committed to you, Auburn. Go to Alabama. They turn out pretty damn good. But I remember Jaden Roberts coming out of Houston, big time, just a giant frame on him. Let's switch over to the defensive side, talk about what Womack is going to do coming from South Alabama. He's the son of a coach. So that means he's used to putting in a lot of work. What's going to be different about the Alabama defense? They're always going to have players. And I remember, talking with Roman Harper. We'd love to have him on the show out of Prattville. He didn't have any allegiance to Auburn or Alabama. His parents both went to Alabama State. You remember D'Amico Ryans out of Bessemer. Remember Tyrone Prothro out of Heflin. Some of these guys that were kind of, people look how they all turned out. By the way, how is Tyrone Prothro doing these days? I mean, I know we all remember the game. I think it was October 1st or 2nd of 2005. I was in the amphitheater at the College of Architecture at Auburn watching that game on a big screen, and it just made your stomach just twist and turn. But hell of a player, and I'll never forget that catch, nor will anybody else, in the Southern Miss game that he made over and under and behind his shoulder.
Yeah. Won an award from ESPN for that, the catch of the year. Tyrone, last time I talked to Tyrone, he was doing really, really well. I mean, again, he had 12 surgeries on that leg. I mean, it was really unfortunate. If you remember the circumstance, it was a 31-3 game with about 8 or 9 minutes left. And They had a 4th down at about I guess the Florida 30-something yard line, and Shula decided to go for it, and he told Tyrone, "You're not in. You're out. You're done for the day." And Tyrone told me this himself. He said, "Look," he said, I convinced him to let me go back in on that play. He said, "If I'd have just listened to Coach," he said, none of this would have happened." But he goes back in. Brody Kroll chunks one up. Tyrone goes up for it, comes down the wrong way, and that leg snapped. And it's been, that was the end. That was the end. He had a Heisman-like day that day too. If you remember, on the first play from scrimmage, he catches an 87-yard touchdown. That was Urban Meyer's first Florida game.
It was
first Florida team. But I'll say this too. That was one of the most electric atmospheres.
Correct.
You could sense before the game that was going to be Alabama's day. I mean, something just told you that was going to be Alabama's day. It was so electric in that stadium. That was the best performance in the Shula era, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was. And Rod, look, Yancy Porter is going to try to join us. He's in a meeting. He'll try to get on, but I want to ask you a few things. When you think about the college football, and you're talking about some of these great games and great players, it's all about the culture of what's expected out of you. And you pick the program. And we also think about history, traditions, and heroes. We think about the brick and mortar of a campus, the stadium. In the NFL, they brag about how new and state-of-the-art it is. In college, we talk about how old they are, but you got to renovate them. Auburn, did you get the memo? It's not 1938. The WPA project's over. Got to do some work on that. But facilities now, and I was talking with Brenden Martin, our executive producer, who's kind of feeling like crapola today. He's got the flu, but before the show, and, we talked about facilities. It's just when everybody's building these football-only facilities that look like the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek. Now, are facilities as important? I don't think they are, as just give me some NIL cash. And I think the coach that fired the shot over the bow about where we might be going was a couple of years ago. Ole Miss was going to do a $350 million facelift on Vaught Hemingway Stadium, Rodney. And I think Lane Kiffin convinced them to hold on a second. Let's put money into NIL. And the Grove Collective now has over 11,000 members at Ole Miss. And look what they're doing in NIL. So are facilities now kind of like, I think the kids will show up. You can show them facilities, but if you don't have NIL money, they're not coming, are they?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think obviously facilities are still important to an extent, but that's something NIL is, we can go back to what Nick Saban said. I mean, right after the Rose Bowl, he interviewed 32 of his players which he does the exit interviews every year, or whatever after the season, and says, "Hey, what do you think about the season? What are you looking forward? What's your thoughts?" and this kind of thing. And out of those 32, I think 30 of them said the same thing. "Coach, how much am I going to make next year?" It wasn't about we fell short. We didn't win the national championship. It's about how much am I going to make next year. So I think obviously NIL is extremely important. It's right at the top of the list for sure.
Yeah, and Buddy Martin is going to join us here in just a second. He loves to come on when you and Yancy are on, but I know you're on right now. Love to go back and talk some history and current events. You're talking to one of the best sports writers ever to pick up actually to use a typewriter. And hey, and by the way, Rodney and Buddy, Brenden, we all remember when you'd be in the press box and they developed the film, you'd get in that cylindrical thing, that tube, and you'd go in there and you'd spin around and you'd come out with those photographs. And I will never forget watching these two sports writers from Tokyo covering a game in the SEC one time. And after a big play, they're like, I mean, unbelievable. I couldn't understand what they were saying. They were speaking Japanese. But, man, the enthusiasm for college football, when Buddy Martin comes on here and when Rodney Orr is on here from Tider Insider, Buddy from GatorBetMedia.com, I get really excited. Buddy, how are you this morning? Thanks for letting me be on your show last night. That was fun.
Rob, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and we had a good one. it's amazing. I did a show this morning with Shane, his show, and just looking back as we did last night at college basketball, of course, is over for Gator fans more or less, although there's a lot, yet to be done, and there's a lot of good stories. But we asked the question last night. Let me get my camera straightened out here.
Yeah.
That's not me, by the way, just in case you know. I've done a couple of shows this morning already. So bottom line is I'll ask both of you, changing over, what was your favorite story in March Madness? And mine's easy. I just love the Oakland story, and I've had a great deal of fun with it. But I'm going to switch over for 1 second and say, it made me realize, Rodney and Rob and Brenden, if you're still on here, it made me realize there's still hope for people. It's not all about money. I know people keep saying it is, and I get it. But, Rob, Newton's law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
So when things swing all the way over here about money, at some point, the other important values are going to come up over here. And just in the last couple of days, I've seen things that gave me hope. Things that mattered, that were about values. And one of them was the great story about Oakland. What's funny about Oakland is, Rodney, about two days, people thought they were in California. They didn't know they're in Rochester, Minnesota. Their coach has only been there 40 years, 40. And the star player is a guy looked like he was an insurance salesman at 33 years old. Could shoot it from anywhere and just set all kinds of rolls. 10 threes he got. 10 threes. Yeah. Unbelievable. So that was a great story. And then I'll just touch upon another one and I'll stop talking. Still waiting for college football to surface here. We still got more good stories to go in Final Four. The Masters is coming up, my favorite sporting event in a couple of weeks. I'll be all over that. But when I saw the golf story last week, now a lot of people don't follow golf. I do. And I didn't say I watched every round of Valspar. I didn't turn it on. Thought I don't know one single person on here, not one single person. But I decided to watch it at the end. What a story that turned out to be. If you guys haven't seen it, the guy who won was 36 years old. He's a guy that nobody ever heard of except the people on the tour because he's been working with the policy board on the PGA Tour. Oh, yeah, remember the PGA Tour? Yeah, there still is one, just in case you remember. He worked on that, gave up his time. He's got 2 small boys and a beautiful wife who's successful at her own things, and he gave up his time. He never even played in a major, but he had that day and that time. He made those great putts, and he won the tournament, and it was an emotional. I mean, it broke me up. Dawn and I were sitting there watching this guy, thinking, "Oh man, I'm all about him." I think those are the stories we're looking for, guys, and they're still out there. I don't know. It's just maybe I'm just a little sappier about it because I want them so badly, but I just think there's hope, guys.
No, I do too, and Yancy's on here, but Rodney answered that question, and I'm wearing a shirt here, buddy, from Burning Tree. My son gave it to me. It's a golf course. I don't know anything about it.
I had one of those shirts. I had that shirt 4 years ago. Brenden
I got it in Charlotte last month. I was up there, and he gave it to me to wear because he said, "Oh, I don't like what you're wearing." And I'm like, "Okay." And it's a golf course in Maryland. There's people going, "Oh, do you play Burning Tree?" I'm like, "I don't play golf, but I play with I like to play hunter, Rodney Orr, talk about what Buddy just said, and then we'll bring Yancy in here about the best story in March Madness right now, because you're a great writer, and you see things that other people walk right by. Walk on by.
I don't know about that. I think I've walked on by so far in this March Madness. It's kind of like Brenden said earlier. I mean, there's so much going on. There's so much information. It's hard for me to keep up with it all. And I've really, to be honest with you, I mean, I focused on Alabama's story in the NCAA tournament. I mean, but we have a lot of things.
Alabama's in it. I forgot.
Yeah,
all the SEC teams got beat.
They're in the
Yeah.
Sweet 16.
I know.
Obviously, they got a tough road here with North Carolina. But so I've obviously been keeping up with that. But also, right now we're in the middle of spring practice here, which is really a big deal in Tuscaloosa, especially when you have a new coach, Kalen DeBoer. And guess what? They're bringing in recruits by the hordes
Yes.
here. So that's been another thing. So it's just been a lot going on. I'm not really in Buddy's position where I have a great perspective of that. But, but I have to admit, Buddy, I have to admit to you, I did not know exactly where Oakland was. I had to ask somebody. I said, "Are we
No.
referring to California?" I mean,
Well, there's an Oakland in Fayette County out near Somerville, right next to Memphis, but that's about it. But Yancy, along these lines, it's spring practice down in Oxford. Chris Beard didn't want to take the Rebels to the NIT, but jump in this conversation, man. I'll twist your arm. Will you talk some college football with us?
I think, I think it's funny. Roddy's basically saying, "What's basketball? It's spring practice time, guys."
Hey,
While his team's in the Sweet 16,
sorry
that
for
lets you know.
interrupting you. I wanted to say one thing on that. No, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I had to say it. The great Jones Ramsey, an SID of the old school kind, the guys we all value so much at Texas. Many years ago, I met him. And he said, in Texas, there's two sports, football and spring football.
Yeah. You damn right. All right, Lafayette County right now. That's home of Ole Miss. And I was just talking, Yancy, I want to give you credit for something. You said this a year and a half ago. When Ole Miss was in the midst of that $350 million facelift of Vaught Hemingway Stadium,
Yeah.
you said Lane Kiffin obviously got somebody's ear or the ears of many and said, hold on a second. Before we spend $350 million on a stadium that is basically an NRA except for 8 days of the year and a few practices, that's a non-revenue producing asset in business terms. Let's take some of that $350 million and pump it into NIL.
Yeah.
Hence the Grove Collective with over 11,000 members. And I got a lot of friends. They go, Bobby, I'm a member of the Grove Collective. I am supporting Ole Miss. I am a shareholder. Yancy, you talked about that before anybody else did. Give you credit. Always give credit where it is due. So talk about that. That's a significant shift, a paradigm shift in what most programs are doing right now.
I was on the Arkansas message boards last night reading about Musselman and what's going to happen with him and,
Yeah.
the SMU ordeal. And they're having NIL problems over there. And they were saying we're spending all of our alumni. The foundation is getting the money from the alumni and doing facility upgrades. And the NIL has been left to dry. And that's one of the reasons that he is looking at SMU because of Arkansas's NIL situation. And, it's the facilities are great, but if you don't get the players to win, what good does it do you? So, Lane put a stop basically to the football expansion or redo or whatever you want to call it, and said let's not have a conflict of interest here with alumni. And you're trying to get money from them to redo the stadium, and we're trying to get money to try to get football players. Something's got to give, so let's all get on the same path and go get some players. And it's not a coincidence that I think Ole Miss always felt like that if they could if they could buy players like some of the schools were allowed to back in the old structure, because the NCAA kept hammering them for doing the same thing that the traditional blue bloods were doing, while they you didn't pick on them and they picked on schools like Ole Miss, they could be on level playing field with everybody else and they could win big. And I think that belief has now come kind of proven to be correct. So if they're able to do the same thing that all the other schools are doing, they got a chance, and they do. I mean, it's I think that the feeling is around camp that it's even the rosters are even a little bit ahead of what they were expecting when they put this together. They're pleasantly surprised at the defensive back group. The defensive line is the returning players, the that have really taken a step, and their main objective this spring is just not to have any injuries. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, you think, Yancy, that Lane may just call off the rest of spring then?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to have the Grove Bowl. I can tell you that. They're talking about doing the NFL thing where you kind of like have a flag football game in sand. I don't think it's going to be a all out scrimmage that we've seen in the past. There's no depth charts. Media can't discuss injuries. He can't discuss injuries. There will be no depth chart at all. So I don't know how you have a scrimmage. And the reason for that is now that everybody's trying to protect their players from leaving. And
Yeah.
so if you're running third string, it doesn't matter if you've already transferred. You see players now that transferred out in December, and they're transferring again coming
Yeah,
up.
right,
There's a
right.
couple guys from Ole Miss that transferred out, and one in particular I'm not going to name, but he's a big name, and he wants back. So it's a different era, and it's spring now. If you have these depth charts, if you do have controlled scrimmages, and you could have injuries, or you could have players get their feelings hurt about where they stand, and they leave after the spring.
Yeah. Buddy, I got an idea for spring practice games. Don't play your regular team because of what Yancy just said. That's an idea. And bring back everybody that ever played for Ole Miss that is physically able and let them go out there and have a scrimmage.
Bunch of heart attacks.
The Legends game. How about that?
But you know what would be fun in high school ball? They have these jamborees. And they bring 3 teams and they play each other a quarter. And there's so many colleges in Florida. I'm sure they're afraid they're going to help them recruiting. But you take you won't take South Florida or one of those schools. You would take Jacksonville or take some small school in Florida and let them play a quarter against them in the stadium and give the money to charity and help them out a little bit. Because after all, these small schools are getting, unfortunately, just decimated by this. Their players are getting ripped away and whatever. So do a little something, put something back. Get some of the smaller schools, get them all play a quarter, come to the spring game, have real ball. Don't play your first team all the time, and just see what you got and charge money and raise money and give it back. I mean, there's a lot of creative, but coaches are so protective. You're right. It was Yancy, I think. Oh, don't give them a 3D chart. No, that backup tackle we got. We don't want to. Don't do that. And it's got to. I laugh about this because when they originally talked about not wanting to have certain kind of events a certain time, but Kirby always says, "Well, we can't play that. It'll hurt recruiting." And I often say, you know what? It's like Kirby that says, "Call off Christmas. It's hurting recruiting." It's always about whatever is best in their best interest. And I get it. I understand. I feel sorry for these guys because it is more than a wild, wild west. It's crazy. And there are no rules. And what do you expect the kids will think when there are no rules? Oh, I transferred. I can transfer again. There's somebody out there wants me. So that's what we have. I'm hopeful, as I said earlier in the moment, that some of these really good stories about values, about people that are holding line, but the people who didn't take the money, that this is Scott Malnati, who was who won in the Valspar, and it was a great story. He's crying. He now his life has changed. He's so grateful to have the money opportunity. And I got to thinking about it. We can all look at ourselves and say, Rob, you heard me say last night, I am so blessed. I can come on this show at nighttime and talk with friends about things that matter. That's an important thing, and that's what we have to get back to. I know it's like I'm preaching, and I understand there's some good things out of this. I think the players should get paid, but let's not ever lose our values. That's what it's about. Yeah,
and Rodney, Buddy, Yancy, again, from my perspective as a financial advisor, 33 years, never once have we had a wealthy family dole out 10, 15, 20 million to their 18 and 19-year-old children. They're age-banded trusts. They get it at 25, 30, and 35, or incentive-based trust, or some of both. Incentive-based is for every dollar that you earn from having a job, you get X number of dollars from the trust, or you do a morality clause in there. Okay, and in the real business world, we all know some people get paid upfront money to go and from one company to another, and you name the business. Okay, you try to leave 1 year into a 5-year deal, you owe that money plus 80%. It's all prorated. You're allowing these kids to just run afoul of the rules of a civilized society. It's not going to work. And look at lottery winners. How fast do they burn through that money? I mean, think about it. An 18-year-old kid gets $500,000. You think that's not going to affect him and the way people treat him? As one of my wealthiest friends told me before he died, he said, man, when I was divorced, he said, I'd be out in a bar and I'd meet some, lady talking to me. What do you do? They'd see his car, say, I'm a rodeo clown. Oh, okay. Well, watch how it's amazing how good looking somebody can get when they got a ton of money, how popular they are. But the question is for everybody here, and I'll throw it first to Rodney and then to Yancy. It's not just, as any sports agent you ever talk to will tell you, it's not just the individual. You try to talk to them about being good with their money. It's the 20 or 30 people that are sucking the life out of them. Ask Vince Young what that did to him. You pick the player.
Mm-hmm.
Financial literacy is critical, and it's not being taught very often.
Yeah. Alabama, Nick Saban had a program in place for his players from the very beginning to try to help them with managing their money and the things that they're, just weren't very good at, obviously. Something they just didn't have enough information about. And, there's been players, and I certainly am not going to mention names, but I remember one in particular was a top 5 draft pick, got a lot of money, but you know what? He had a lot of hangers-oners too.
Yeah.
People that were hanging on, that he bought cell phones for, he did everything, all these things for, and he basically went broke. And I don't know whether it's Sports Illustrated or whoever it was, some media put out something last week or two that 80% of NFL players, when they retire after a certain number of years, they're broke. I mean, there's only like 20 that have anything to show for it. So
3 years.
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah. 3 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And
That
guess what?
made over $10 million.
Yeah. And so I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas. And when they started the lottery there, I mean, they did a survey on, where are these people after they won $16 million, 3, 4 years later. And that was an incredible percentage. I mean, 90% were broke. I mean, $16 million, and within a few years, they're broke.
The same thing with the lottery winners. If you go back and look at that, it's the same thing. They broke.
The study shows it. They take a lump sum up front or the annual payments. Take the annual payments.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, Yancy, talk about it. You know guys that have played at Ole Miss, went in and played professionally. You've got to basically, if you're a professional athlete, Yancy, everything you're doing on that team is paid for. Airfare, hotels, everything. Live like you're making about $50,000 a year instead of going out and bench pressing your wallet in public to try to get friends. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, you have your network of people that you are paying for, and that's the problem.
That's
you got
the problem.
8, 10, 12 people that you're paying, and all of a
Your
sudden
posse.
your
You got your
bill,
posse. Your posse got to be paid out there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're paying $150,000 a month for your friends and family and stuff like that, and they're on your payroll, and it's and then you got all the shorts. Everybody comes out to these professional athletes, and they hustle them. How many former professional athletes have you heard that was approached about owning a club, a part-time owner, that was not around the club, maybe one down in Miami or something, just give us 250,000, and then that 250,000 turns into another 250,000. Then, before you know it, they lost $2 or $3 million on that club. So it's just it's the same old that I don't know if the 18-year-olds are going to get quite to those kind of numbers. I think we're going to get some kind of settlement coming up here with the West Virginia judge that put a restraining order on players allowed to, transfer multiple times. I believe that case comes up this summer. The NCAA is waiting on that, and there's going to be some NIL structure, I think, coming along in August that comes in. So I think we're going to get a little clarity. I don't think it's going to be quite like it is now, but it's never going to go away.
Yeah, I think, too, the fans are going to start speaking. A couple of things I'm going to say predict will happen in the coming years. You're going to have something that we're going to start to hear a lot about, and I've come up with this, the fan transfer portal, okay? You watch. It's going to start happening. Another thing that's going to start happening is fans are going to start telling these colleges, which for the most part are state universities, hold on a second. You don't tell us what we can do. You're a state-funded university, okay? The sunshine laws, transparency, and all that. Denying people access because they dare to criticize what that coach is doing or whatever like that. We got to put an end to that. We got to have the return of the open and fair free press, okay? We got to bring that back. But I think the fans, you're going to start seeing stadiums shrink like we're already doing with luxury seating if it doesn't stop. Because the fans are going to say, you're beating us over the head with a baseball bat. You got to buy season tickets. You got to pay for priority seating. You got to do all this stuff. Oh, then you got to do NIL. When people are giving more to NIL than they are tithing to their church, watch out. That's when the market, the free market will correct itself. Watch what happens. And kids showing up when they're 18, 19 in a Lamborghini, and you got some guy out there that's got a family with, 5 or 6, mom, dad, 3 or 4 kids, and he's scraping money together to buy season tickets for that. I'm a capitalist and all, but, don't shove it in people's face. And it's going to come back and bite you. Blood's thicker than water, but money's thicker than blood. Remember that.
Here's the way not to lose your money. Just don't have any. Be a broke sports writer when you start out, and the vows of poverty to go with it. And then when you get to that point, you don't have to worry about losing because you don't have any to lose.
Well, put it away and forget you have it. I mean, the thing is, it's frustrating I'm a capitalist, but you also common sense when you got to tell these people, say, I'm not responsible for your upkeep. And that's why a lot of these guys' careers fall apart. And Rodney, you mentioned it, and so did you, Yancy. Look, man, we run out of time. And I know Brenden, our executive producer, is fighting a bad flu bug. Brenden, get better. But man, folks, you got to follow Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, Sports 56 WHBQ, Monday nights, 6 p.m. Also, Super Talk Mississippi and Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. It's only $48 a year. And he's got a great book out there, Bigger Than Bama. You should read this book. It'll resonate with you. And Buddy Martin, look, Monday through Thursday, sometimes Fridays, the Buddy Martin Show, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's live on YouTube and a lot of other social media channels. He has great panel discussions every night, great sports writers, great guests. You will learn a lot. Look, all textbooks in college are the same. How deep you dig into those textbooks separates you from the pack. Follow all these guys that we just talked about and Chris Lee, Southeastern 14. We're here to serve, get information out. Smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner and get out to the Vitamin Shop in Oxford, Mississippi, and in Olive Branch, Mississippi, and follow Clay Smoked Tuna. He'll be at the Regional 1 Medical Center today for the best tuna you've ever had, smoked chicken salad and all at the Regional 1 Medical Center in Memphis. But we'll be back tomorrow. Happy Easter, everybody. It's Holy Week. Appreciate everybody being on and watching. Again, tell your friends we are out of here.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.